Welcome, welcome, everybody listening, tuning in. I'm Shaunga, co-creator of the Ancestors Writers Room, Otherworldly Giants Storytelling School. Welcome to this YouTube video. I have very special guests and friends with us today, Abby and Ravyn. Um, welcome, welcome. This is an open classroom, and so my intention over the summer is to share a series of open classrooms, taking you through our summer programming. And if you're just tuning in, Otherworldly Giants is a company and a storytelling school that champions the ancestor healing journey. And so we're really looking at ancestor veneration in the creative process and all the ins and outs of what that um, looks like when you add that to your craft or you begin with that in your craft, and how that actually changes your life as well. Because it's not just, when you create with your ancestors, it's not just in one project and then you go back and live a normie life. I mean, sometimes I think we start out like that or we try, but it really feeds our entire life. And for me, especially, and a lot of people on this life path. It changes our life. So this is a space to really talk about that and offer some things from our school. And so, um, yeah, to begin with, why don't you introduce yourselves? Say hello to our viewers.
Okay, I can start. Hello, everyone. I'm Raven Wings. Nice to meet you. I'm really excited to be here in this moment, in this ceremony, where we get to unabashedly talk about our ancestors, our root systems, and create this new kind of ecosystem for a safe landing place for us to have those conversations. So, very excited to be here in this school.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Abby. Um, Echoing everything that Raven has said, and additionally quite enthusiastic about being in a co-learning space. One of my favorite things about unconventional or rewriting what education or remembering what education could look like is learning and teaching. And so I'm excited to find out what y'all might learn from me and also what I'll learn from y'all. Mhm.
Yeah, I love that, because that is really maybe the heart behind like why my spirit wanted to create a storytelling school to begin with, is about what it means to decolonize learning. I've always loved school, and I hated school in so many ways because of the ways that colonization makes it a place that squashes the spirit of learning, right? And so I'm really interested in reclaiming all of that. And yeah, as Raven said, this word, the ecosystem, right? And so that's what I'm really invested in too, is like I personally have been creating art with my ancestors for my whole life basically. I'm about to turn 41, Gemini season. Um, but for the last decade, I've been doing it intentionally, like working with teachers, and I've had a lot of success on this path. I've had a lot of like um it's been so rewarding, and it's also been so painful and challenging, um because of the ways that, especially when we're talking about decolonizing and revolutionary ancestors, they dismantle all the things that stand in the way of um how they know how to do things and what they want to bring back, and uh if you've been following my work, I've been doing a lot of work on, bringing back our memories of the thriving village, right? And so when we bring our ancestors forward, who know how to do that and who remember that, they simultaneously will break away everything else that isn't that, and that we might have a lot of attachment to. And so I've been doing this work, for intentionally for a decade. It's been so rewarding and so painful, um, and so wealthy. So much success, in developing these spiritual gifts. And what I find is missing right now in my life, and when I look at the life path as a whole, is a thriving ecosystem, a thriving economy, a thriving base to protect the journey as a whole. Because that's kind of what I see and what I've experienced in my life is that there's so much wealth, so much success coming out of this life path. And we need more stability in terms of stabilizing that process. So more of us are protected in that process. Um, So those are kind of my initial thoughts because that's really where the programming that I want to offer this summer is going. It's what does it mean to create an ecosystem, an economy that stabilizes the process of, we'll say, personal and collective transformation, especially on the ancestral level. Um, so you know what? Let me throw it to you to begin with before I show you officially the class that I'm going to take you through today. Um, what does success mean to you right now? And where do you feel successful? Where do you feel wealthy?
What does success mean to me? I mean, what success has meant to me in the past. I'll start there and then I'll go to the evolved understanding of success. But success was really just making my mom proud,
Hmm.
which meant um, having a sense of self and a sense of responsibility in relationship to how I represented myself in public, how I honored um, my home and her teaching by the way that I carried myself in these spaces. Um, it also meant learning to articulate myself um, in a way that I could both um, confront, defend, and uplift um, if I so choose to. And so that was success to me. And then, over the years, success was, being the best dancer in the school or those kinds of successes. But as I have moved away from the centering of whiteness in my practice and whiteness as a construct, as a system of doing things, um, success is really about a felt sense of joy, a
Hmm.
felt sense of joy in my practices, a felt sense of gratitude in the work that I do. So it isn't really tied to a job
Hmm.
anymore or an idea of an identity. It's really about like it's still related to relationships, but it's about relationship with like everything. Like um humans are material in my mind. And so this organic connection with the land, with people, with beyond human relatives, as well, and how that particular ecosystem um, works together. I feel like that's where I'm moving towards success, and that's where I feel like I can locate it.
And so follow-up question, because having known you for a long time, I know that your relationship, because it's interesting you said at first success is making my mom proud.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm just laughing because I was like, I said the word champion, like very
Yeah.
pronounced, and that's, very much related to your mom, that word. Um, but your relationship with your mom has changed a lot. over the last decade. And so now your definition of success, um, and where you're locating it in your body and this felt experience of joy, where's your mom in that?
That's a good question. I think my mom is the seed of it,
Mm,
and throughout my experience of life, it's been watered by many people, many relationships, and connections and experiences. And so, the roots, the seed is from my mother. Um, but what it's evolved into is this larger connection with all beings. That
mm,
makes sense.
I love that.
Yeah. Not that I like everybody, to be clear. I don't like everybody. But the point is to
Yeah.
to have
Yeah.
sense of other people, to be in relationship to other people, to not like, as Dr. Maya Angelou says, um, not to keep people in my own ignorance, keep them imprisoned in my own ignorance,
Mm,
um, and not allowing them to be a human with um, multiple dimensions and realities, and myself as well.
hmm. Abby, what do you think?
Many things. But in relationship to success and wealth, I I'm in an interesting place where I want to go beyond to thinking outside of the box. I want to break the box down into pulp and make something new with it. And so I haven't been thinking about life in terms of success actually.
Mm,
Um, Ironically enough, I'm having a hard time uh, uh, answering the question or creating a definition in and around it. Not that
mm,
there is a moral goodness or badness to thinking that way. Today, my person is like, I have no idea. I have no idea. Um, what motivates me, however, is this forever seekingness of feeling alive and aliveness.
hmm
Um, I'm particularly excited by coming into awareness of patterns that I can decide to change or not. I'm
hmm
particularly excited by um, the epiphany when you're in a relationship with someone and you're like, this is the type of love I did not know that I needed. Um, but
hmm
I'm but I'm realizing that the way that we relate is so good for both of our persons.
hmm
Um, Especially the relationships that are incredibly activating. And in your own stubbornness, you're like, ooh, but we're going to work through that because it's kind of like a bone breaking and resetting. It's a decoding and recoding, right? And that's what is particularly exciting for me, specifically with the gift and burden of being a part of a generation of people who have, I don't think the majority of us realize it, but we have a very specific type of power and agency to shape our world and our reality. Um, and so when we start to come into that knowledge of like we are going to be the elders, and in the
hmm
trans world, I am over 30, so I'm already an elder. Like I like ah, so that is what has been motivating to me and exciting for me. I guess to answer the part two of your question of like where I feel wealthy, um, I'm in such gratitude of the fact that I'm so curious. Like there's a childlike wonder that I like to feed. Um, and even in things feeling particularly challenging, um, I I'm always asking questions and wanting to go a little bit deeper on them. Um, can I share a quick example of this?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm in martial arts training and we're learning forms. Um, Particularly, it is our niece, which comes from the Philippines. And the forms that we're doing requires that you do everything with your right hand and also your left hand. So the whole practice is ambidextrous. Um, and there's this flow that I'm learning, and I could get it with my right hand, and then we turn around and we switch, and you do the same with your left hand. And I can't wrap my head around it. The choreography is off. I'm like a good 3 seconds behind everybody else, and it has to be in sync.
Hmm.
And the biggest curiosity about this is that I was born a left-handed person. I I popped out of my mother's womb, and everything was lefty. And and so it has turned away from a process of like I resent my body and my brain for not being able to learn at this rate, and becomes a process of, oh, I think I'm remembering like
Hmm.
how to use the parts of myself that have been quite literally trained out of me. Like
Hmm.
utensils would be taken out of my left hand and put into my right hand instead. So yeah, yeah, there was many thoughts. One, in Ghana, you eat with your right hand, and then you wash with your left hand, which ironically removes the ambidextrous thing of it because now I wipe with my right hand and I eat with my right hand. So you just wash your hands. Anyways, so I'm in this process of remembering, and it's really exciting to like be motivated to want to do it at all. And that's what is has been my driving force. Um, but yeah, I don't have any uh, hierarchical goals. I just want to keep being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I was thinking while you were talking, but my first question is, have you can't come to any discernment around, because in my spiritual practice, I associate the left side of my body with grandmothers and the right with grandfathers. Have you come to any discernment around like what ancestors, I'm just interested in this sort of like side of
Oh,
the body kind of thing,
the sides of the
especially,
body. Yeah.
yeah.
Like the dichotomy of them. Um, Probably. I haven't delved deeply into it as yet. Um, I do have an awareness that I am fascinatingly very, very comfortable with. Um, I'm very comfortable with masculine energy. Um, I'm very comfortable around um, people who can also embody masculine energy as well. Um, there might be a left side thing, and there's always the mother wounds that come into play um,
Hmm.
over and over and over again. Um, there's also an interesting thing of like removing from the left hand into the right hand
Yeah.
is that the signs of me being a trans kid was always there. Like it really was always there.
Hmm.
Um, and there was also a conditioning into femininity that I didn't get to choose.
Hmm. Hmm.
There was a
Hmm.
total removal of agency that was there as well. Yeah, any declaration to want to have a different type of hair that wasn't deemed feminine or wear particular clothes that weren't for particular social settings always came with very particular types of um, I will say very confidently, types of verbal abuse and emotional abuse. Um, that anything that wasn't, uh, you have a vulva and thus you have to be a hyper feminine person, and anything that you do is actually ugly, right?
Hmm.
So there is definitely something that is there that's psychological.
Hmm.
And I haven't yet fully given it the attention that I would like to. Because the list of traumas are long, so we're getting there.
Hmm.
As the list gets shorter, it's like, hey, do you want to talk about your mother wounds? And I'm like, do we have to?
Yeah,
Do
it's just
we have to?
um
Yeah,
like as you both know, I'm an alter carrier, right? And so my brain starts going off the
yeah,
ceremony
yeah, yeah.
in me, right? When we're talking about different sides of the body and left and right. And it's interesting because my foot is really hurting right now. Is oh my gosh, like every time me and Abby talk, like something's going on with with my feet. And I really like at this point in my life, I associate the feet with leadership and direction, like the director in me. And in, the ancestral healing journey, there's a thing that happens um where there's something that's always trying to the opposition. There's an opposition that comes, right? When we're like trying to bring forward these these parts of ourselves that have been suppressed and violated and genocided and all these kinds of things, right? And how it happens in the ancestral realm, the energetics around us, that there's like a level of I'm gonna try and keep you asleep. When you're trying to wake up, I'm gonna try and get you to sleep. And so I often recognize this when this is happening, when my feet fall asleep, because that happens to me a lot, especially when I'm sitting at my altar and trying to, and engaging in ceremony. And so today, this morning, my left foot fell asleep, and then I tried to get up and I rolled it, and that's why it's hurting right now. And so it's interesting that we're having this conversation about like what happens, what's going on with the left side of the body, the left hand, the left foot, right? And yeah, just exactly what you mentioned, this like this transphobia, right? And it just resonates so much just in this like act of taking things out of your left hand, right? And putting it in your right hand. Like no, you're not supposed to express that part of your body, right? Um, yeah, so that was speaking to me. Um, Raven, any thoughts jumping in here?
Yeah, Sonia Levins Morales talks about the atlas of the body being a site for revolution. Um, and many people talk about this, right? Like that the revolution starts in the body, um, and the body as earth, the body as universe, the body as body. Um, and our I was talking today with a group of students about the nervous system. The
Hmm.
question was, like, how do I like find this sense of calm in my body when it usually feels so chaotic? I don't know how to settle. And I talked about um, turning to the medicine of the land and or whatever um, makes that person's body go,
Hmm.
you know, it's already in there. It's already in your practice, but you have to go back and locate it. And sometimes when the blood returns, it's painful. And so when we're going back into these memories of right hand, left hand, of forced um, binary performance, and and the ways in which survival showed up in our bodies, in our personalities, in the way that we kind of move through a space. Um, it's always really fascinating where you find those things or how they kind of show up in your space in your life. So I'm just thinking about that in relationship to even as storytellers, um, who you might be favoring speaking to.
Hmm.
There might be one particular parent who you are usually in conversation with when you are working, maybe a different parent when you're writing, maybe it's a grandmother when you're doing something else or a sporting activity, maybe it's just different people all around. Um, but you can locate them in your body, like a tree with all these different branches, your root system going down and up. It's so vast. Um, how deep these wounds and truths go. Um, yeah, and so I think a lot about for myself how to when these things trigger, like when my chest starts to squeeze, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm taking in too much of dot's pain, or I am trying to take the load on myself as opposed to sitting here and just witnessing, offering a space for those stories or that grief to land, and just sitting with the grief. I don't need to work it. I don't need to do and be in the doing. Sometimes it's just resting. Sometimes it's just waiting and sitting. And so when you work with the nervous system, when you work with the land, and for me, particularly flower medicine theory, you really understand how these wildflowers bloom and continue to kind of spread, right? From dandelions to elderberry bush. There's just something about the way that they function that's so connected to what can help us move through these difficult knowings.
Yeah. So I want to take us now here to what I wanted to share in terms of the classroom kind of stuff today, because really there's something here that I've been doing this massive research project for the last few years in terms of like, when we're talking about an ecosystem and an economy, like what kind of structure, system, culture, paradigm protects everything that we're talking about here and the deep, deep journey that we go on, which does involve bringing up a lot of pain. It does involve learning how, being still in the grief, right? And so that's what I'm really invested in offering something. Um, and in doing this big research project, I'm starting to say, okay, I'm ready to invite someone in, I'm ready to invite people into what my vision of this grounding can be right now that can really hold us through these big, big, deep healing and transformations that we're going through. So I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. So this is my Miro board, although I've heard people say Miro. I don't know how to say it the right way, but what I am building, I'm calling the Spider-Woman Network. Okay, so this is a storyteller, producer, and showrunners guild for the Planetary Artist in residence. And the tagline is, "We don't work for the industry, we work for the planet." So this is a network, and it is for artists who create with their ancestors, with spirit, magic, and the otherworldly, and who weave justice, liberation, and solidarity work in the foundation of our practice. Ah, yes, enlarge. So, what is a storyteller, producer, and showrunners guild? And what is a planetary artist in residence? I've been using that language for a little bit now, and I kind of want to break down what that means today. So, over here in Hollywood, right? In mainstream entertainment arts industries, you know, um, writing industries, right? We have writer and producer guilds, major networks, and big corporate studios. So what are these places supposed to offer us? They're supposed to be places that support storytellers realize their projects and develop their craft. And the industry as a whole is supposed to nurture and inspire the life path as a whole. They're supposed to house what we have to create, right? And provide things that we can't do on our, by ourselves, and provide an environment for us to, like Abby said, like feel alive, right? This is about not just doing the work, it's about I feel alive while I'm doing this because it's what I'm supposed to do. And so we need places to go, right? I think about like when you're when people give advice to artists, right? They're like, "What should I do? I want to make it as an artist." You should move to LA or New York. You should just go to where the industry is, right? Because then you'll meet people, you'll start going on auditions, you'll get teachers, you develop the craft, you invest everything that you have. Just live. And yet we know how hard the industry makes, it for people to live, right? And we're not going to go into breaking down all the things about the industry today, but let's just say as a baseline, it doesn't serve us, some more than others, right? But at its heart, like we need to, that's really what you're supposed to do when you have a calling, you're like, I have art that I want to create. I need to go somewhere where I can find collaborators, I can find mentorship, I can be around inspiring conversations. Um, I just want to be in that village, right? Um, and so what I wrote down here, yeah, it's like, yes, that environment might have its ups and downs and its challenges, and it's not supposed to, hand you everything like at your convenience, but it shouldn't demoralize us to the point of like wanting to quit or causing major trauma or like, you know, even if you put so much of it in, you invest so much and then you end up, broke and you have to quit because you never made it, right? Like, that's not it. An industry should inspire and protect and resource the life path as a whole and see everyone as genuinely valuable, not just for what they create, but just for their presence, right? Their effort and their heart. And that is a really deep lesson that I have been, kind of unfolding in my own. I have a lot of subconscious stuff around that, right? Where I'm in community and I'm like, okay, I'm valuable because like I'm working hard. I'm doing stuff for the community. And, my community has to keep reminding me, right? I've had a lot of, people be like, Shaunga, one of my teachers literally said this to me once. They're like, we don't need your deliverables. Your presence is enough, okay? That's nonprofit industrial complex trauma, right? Like I need to deliver my deliverables, right? Um, and so yeah, when we're saying like these industries don't serve us, I'm also saying we need to recognize how quote unquote the industry and all these interlocking industrial complexes have infiltrated our intimacy, right? So they've infiltrated our ability to create relationships with anything, including ourselves. And that's just the example that I gave, right? Um, but what if when you were young, you had an option in front of you that was viable and lucrative and abundantly joyful, that someone told you you could grow up and work for the planet instead of whatever industry you had to make it in? And what if working for the planet was recognized as more wealthy and more successful, even though, Abby's bringing us, into, these words may or may not have resonance with you, right? Success has something, I'm doing something with that word right now, but it doesn't have to. Yeah, I like where you brought that, Abby, because when I think about what success is for me, it is feeling alive every day. But whatever success may or may not mean to us, right? What if that was the thing that your social surroundings told you like you should go for that, and it's more practical, right? Maybe what if this was more practical than any other industry? And I'm saying this because, as we follow an ancestor healing path, right? We're like open to spirit and magic, and we're developing these spiritual gifts, and we're having all these like experiences with the otherworldly, and it's weird, and we don't know who we can talk to about that. And and we still want to make art, but we need to do it in a specific way. And, you know, me and like a lot of people have these experiences where like you go more and more into your healing and then you try and access these artistic spaces and they just don't work out for you because they're just not in alignment with the ancestors that you're bringing forward, right? Um, and there's such a lack of social celebration or even understanding around what does it mean when you open yourself up to this life path. But what if we had a culture that was like that's actually more practical than getting a real job somewhere. Like this is more real than anything else. If we're looking at really the time that we're in and the decades in front of us and the kinds of challenges we will have to um, live through in order to heal from the impacts of these colonizing systems that are just, we're beyond our breaking point, right? The earth is beyond her breaking point in terms of like how much she can take this kind of stuff on her body. So it is actually more practical for us to invest in whatever it looks like to work for the planet. Um, and what if we knew that there was a way of doing our art that directly fed into that and that directly was like, yeah, you can still live out your artist dreams and work for the planet. And yeah, what if this environment was accessible and welcoming, but also really held people accountable to their self-responsibility, and to the healing of our lineages and to the spiritual and practical solidarity work um, with indigenous leadership on the planet and Black liberation on the planet and the livelihood of survivors and the livelihood of trans people and queer people. So that's my vision, right? That's what my heart wants. Is like I have devoted so much to this life path in times and ways that were dangerous and very, very socially unacceptable. Um, and very hard to get paid directly for what that work is versus having to go out and find all these other ways to get to resource this most important work. And I think maybe that's where I want to land in terms of why, like what the heart about building a place for us to go, like a guild that can feed into a planetary economy is that part. Instead of having to go out in all these different places and get the money to then cover the fact that I'm doing this most important work, I want money to be on the most important work itself. And that's what I'm trying to build here. But to lean back a little bit, I have some study questions on just this part of it, right? If we're talking about there are these guilds in Hollywood, right? There's networks, there's studios. And when it comes to anything in the colonizing world, they took it from somewhere, right? They stole it from something. They took it from a thriving village practice. So what were these supposed to be in the thriving village, in an economy that serves the planet? And so let me let me pause there and ask that question. What do you think these things are supposed to provide for an artist? And if you, as artists right now, are like, you know what, I'm on this life path and I want to create my art and I want to, you know, bring forward a journalism school and I want to, you know, study with these teachers and I want to make the things that my spirit is calling me to make. Um, like what would you want from an industry or a network or this thing, right? That these places are supposed to provide for us. So let me pause there and we can have a little conversation and see what's coming up around that, right? Because I want to get your thoughts. What are these supposed to provide? And what would you need from them, genuinely, if that makes sense?
Okie dokios. Um, hmm. Such a good question, but also just as a acknowledgement and reflection of that deep work and how exciting it is to think about um like working for the planet. It seems simple, but it's quite profound to zoom out that way and zoom in at the same time. When I think about a guild essentially is supposed to provide you with resources,
Mhm.
both educational, financial, and opportunity driven, um, to actuate the possibility of your dream,
Mhm.
right? And so, for example, you want to publish a book, me. You want to publish a book, and so you're going to a publisher because the publisher has a network who they're connected to. They understand um, the literary world,
Mhm.
right? And how to work within a literary context to market your your offering. And you as an individual may not have access or as much um, room, as much space, expansion to reach all those people. And so you're going to them as the intermediary, as a person in between you and your audience to connect you to a larger field, um, and to add your book into, say, a list of memoirs, a list of whatever. You're adding it into a paradigm within the literary world that already exists, or you are defining a whole new genre, um, and shaking the literary paradigm, right?
Mhm.
All those are valuable. And so the publisher or the publishing house would hold a lot of those pieces for you. They're not necessarily making the work, you're making the work, but you make the work and you filter it through their systems to share it out. Um, for example. And so what you would want to have people who believe in your vision, who are helping and supporting you, get to a place where you feel like this is it and this is what's going out. This is the medicine, this is the magic. And then it lands in places and with people who need it. It finds the readers that it needs to find. Um, and that is the satisfaction, that's the success, the satisfaction, the euphoric experience. Yeah.
I like the way you describe this, Ruben, because it it gives the impression that you thought of this guild. You're like, I know exactly where they are, but come to me now. Yeah. Um, I would love to see a guild. I would love to see humans realistically function like mycelial networks, and function in very symbiotic ways. Um, I would love to see, uh, again, sorry, I always go like really big in my thought, and I'm like, and then we go into the vaguest of metaphysical things. But I think a guild needs to be interdependent, and our challenge is that we don't know what that is yet. We
Yeah.
don't know what that feels like or looks like, or how to even function in interdependence in our day-to-day relationships. Um, and with that being said, I would love to see us remember how and get into a practice of knowing um, who thrives in what ways and how to share in the resources to get there. And so, very similarly in what Ravyn is saying, the folks who are the intermediaries, the folks who know how to collect the resources, the folks who know how to take the resource and transmute it into something else, right? Who is that? And that is the function of the artist, right? Um, the those who can help to like keep the artist alive, and not just necessarily with food, but also just being a witnessing to the work itself. Um, I recently performed, and somebody who saw my performance had let me know that the work that I did had motivated him to want to continue making for fun, even though he is a very, by capitalist terms, a very successful artist within the music industry.
Mm.
But was like, oh, you make me want to just make things again and just be. And I'm like, that's dope because I I was just doing a thing. So that kind of feedback and room for those conversations. Um, I think bringing us to a collective place of being able to being afford to live, and affordability is back to that resources bit, right? Um, and understanding the, I guess the philosophy of equity is how I'll describe it, where our varying needs are going to be different. So the resources that we have to acquire for each other are going to be a little bit different. Um, and getting into a practice of remembering that the world is full of so much, there's so much abundance, that one's greater need doesn't take away from one thing, or
Hmm.
many of us doing something that's similar or the same is also really cool. Like, yeah, yeah. Getting to the psychology of it, I guess, but that's how I would love to see a guild function and how I would love to see people be. Um,
Hmm.
mhm,
Yeah, it makes me think a little bit about mirrorship circles, like the way you were describing, Abby. Just like being in like circle and ceremony, as I said mentioned earlier, this container, almost this beautiful, not container to contain, but container to hold, um and to make whole, your fulsome experience, so that you're getting this, it's relationships, right? Is what it all comes down to, like radical beautiful relationships that that are exciting and challenging, and journey our each other, um this way as opposed to this way, just,
Hmm.
yeah.
yeah, yeah, I agree. Like I would love to have, and this comes back to Shaunga, you were mentioning like in the description of this work that we do and how to be resourced and how to be paid for it and knowing the labor of it. Like I would love to have people who are like very deeply versed in um, like relational skills and emotional intelligence, and when we get to those blockers of, is what I'm doing aligned to my purpose, we have people to talk to about that. When we get into interpersonal challenges, right? We already the folks that we go to for these things, the friends that we trust, the therapists we hire, et cetera, et cetera. But having that contextualized in an artist space to be like, we have been encoded to move through the world with such scarcity, um, and with comparison and in competition of each other. Um, when it's unnecessary, especially because one of my core beliefs is that the antithesis of destruction is creation. And there's so much shit that has been destroyed and
Mm-hmm.
damaged. So we have a lot of making to do. We have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of creating to do.
Yeah.
um, so there's a lot of room. There's so much room. We just need to take it and do it and trust that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there's a call to action here, right? There's like a call to action that will make um more possible this guild that you're speaking about, Shaunga. And that is the acknowledgement and doing away with um the patriarchal misogyny baked into what is resourced and what we accept isn't resourced. Um, like the ways in which we have been conditioned to undervalue um, and or overvalue one like something. And so taking the exploitation out of um, out of our medicine, out of this, out of what makes for a thriving village.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really huge piece of it. The exploitation. Um, and yeah, the patriarchal part of it. And I also like been using the term anti-mysticism because there's like a very there's a lot of religious trauma, there's a lot of patriarchy, a lot of like colonization, like and 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 it went for, you know, the gender fabulous people in the village, right? It went for sex workers. It went for the people who had that ability to communicate across the veil. Because when we're doing our work, we're so powerful, right? And so it was very intelligent decision to um, in this multi-generational project, multi-dimensional project of colonization, right? To go for um, suppressing this part of the body, if we're talking about the body, right? And that's one of the things where I'm talking about like how the industry lives in intimacy. Um, and this is where I see a lot of relationship conflict coming up, right? Because there is a thing around when we're creating a space for community, right? We have to think about like, well, how are we looking at all the major conflict and abuse and kinds of things that we can face in our relationships. And a lot of it comes down to that exploitation of um, not just the spiritual worker, but the spiritual workers that are really bringing forth decolonization. And there's a lot of, anti-blackness that happens in that realm. Um, and there's a lot of our ancestors that are being called forward who want to heal that. And it's so important that there's so many voices. When I'm bringing up this conversation about wealth and success because I'm seeing so much wealth in terms of how brilliant people are and how much spiritual knowledge from these deep planetary roots are coming up to the surface. And so many people are like, I have a business, I have an art project, I got something to do, I got a book to write. And what's happening is that we're like, well, how do I do that? Gonna maybe try and get a deal with Netflix. Or I'm gonna try and create some independent studio that is, you know, still emulating, right? These deeper dynamics that we find in the industry. And so that's really, when I'm saying, how do we create an economy that stabilizes the work of personal transformation? It is because like we have the point isn't to find something that is already done. It is how do we stabilize um, a process of supporting one another as we keep dying over and over again, as we keep rebirthing ourselves over and over again, as we keep, falling in love and falling out of love and trying something and having it not work out, having it fail even, and saying, you know what, that wasn't me. I did that wrong. Maybe I'll try again. And one of the reasons why we fight against that natural experience of what we are being called to do in this stretch of time is because we know that it won't be funded. If I fall apart, if I need to stay in bed for weeks on end, grieving because that's what my ancestors need to do, or if I need to sit down and just work with a teacher because like I'm in my own bullshit for 5 months, 2 years, I don't have that funded. You know what I mean? I gotta go get a job somewhere and I'd rather not, put my livelihood in jeopardy. And yeah, and so what I envision for this guild, right, is a place where we can bring together our collective wisdom and brilliance and skills. And part of what I want to offer this summer is just a simple survey, right? So I'm going to be inviting people into this place as founding members this summer. And in doing that, I want to actually understand more of where people are at. And so I'll be putting out a survey that people can share, like, where am I at? What skills do I have to offer? Um, where do I need more support? And this is kind of, Abby, you kind of outlined this when you said what you were looking for in a guild, right? Yeah, I actually I want to create a space where I can do some of that work, right? I can learn who everybody is. And it's interesting, Raven, you've been in artist retreat with me for the last 4 months, and we've kept on asking this question, who are you? And we've put that question to ourselves as like this research study, like, who are you really? But I realized that I was like, in my kind of, times where I'm like, I don't know what to do, la la la, because I don't even know like, what people want or what to give people. I'm like, well, yeah, who are you? I want to create a space where people can say, yeah, I'm working on this. This is the kind of support I need. And then in bringing together, all that information, I'll be able to see, oh, wow, X person over there is doing something that Y person over here really needs. And in this summer, in this process, I'm rooting it in divination, right? And so I'm going to be not just trying to figure everything out in my mind, but really connect with my own ancestors and offer some regular divination and regular like let's keep ourselves on track. What are the ancestors saying through me? And giving, offering fun ways for people to participate in that. Um, so that is what I am planning to do, and I haven't launched it just yet. So just stay tuned for that summer programming. But the other thing that I will say, right, is that in this problem around funding these parts of the process that are actually the most important to us, but that we're like, oh, that's unfunded. That's inevitably unfunded. I actually really believe that together we have skills. We have a lot of skills in organizing, in fundraising, in moving money, and also in other kinds of support we need. Like, yeah, we need to have more conversations about the life path. we need to just be sharing like this is the behind the scenes of what this was like for me. Or this is, like part of what I want to do with this open classroom, right? Is invite Raven to come in and be like, this is the book that I'm writing, and this is, the chapter that I'm working on, and this is the ancestral technology that is coming through that. And a place for Abby to be like, Abby's a little bit younger than Raven and I. And so Raven, like I've been through this like massive ancestral university, I like to call, right? And Abby, I see as someone who's like in the middle of ancestral university. And I'm like, wouldn't it be awesome for a village to fund that? Instead of, oh, I got to go to York University and go into debt and, be traumatized and get a women's studies degree. And so 10 years later, some kid can call me as an alumni and be like begging me for money, and I'm like, I'm not giving you any more of my money. I'm sorry. You know? Instead of that, let's fund ancestral universities. So I'm like, we need to be, in conversation more. And I really believe that once we come together, it's not that we can't, it's that we have to get out of our own way, right? In terms of finding like if we really wanted to fund these parts of life that are most important to us, we can. We just have to choose to figure out a way. And so I have a lot more ideas about that. But that's one of the core things I want to do this summer is to bring in people and just hear where people are at, you know, and then offer, see what we can offer from there. At the end of the summer, I want to host a town hall. And so everybody, who sends in a survey or, invests as a founding member, we can all come together and be in circle. And I can share, um, what suggestions I have. And I'm thinking of bringing together a roundtable team as well to talk about like, yeah, what are some real strategies that we can put forward? Because so many people are it's just about the puzzle pieces, right? So many people have different parts of the puzzle pieces. We need a place to come together. And at in 3 years, I want to see this movement of this is part of my research, right? Building a movement of generating ancestor artist grants for us on this life path. So I want to see us starting to build a movement that can bring in money to say, if Raven's like, I need an artist grant for this. Okay, how can we make that happen for you? And same with Abby. And this summer, Shaunga is going to be doing that too. So that's kind of where I'm at. And thoughts are a little bit scattered today, but I want to, before we end for today, I want to hear from both of you. What are your thoughts?
I think it's beautiful. I think it's and I don't mean that in a cheese. Well, maybe I do mean it in a cheesy way, and that's okay too. But there's something really special about choosing how you're going to live. Not just that you are going to live, like that's a choice, but how you're going to live in your life and what you want that experience to be. And um this this radical, I don't even want to overuse the word, but like this idea of like um everything's made up, right? We are actually existing right now all over the world in this white supremacist delusion. That's why it doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. But it's what we have been forced to accept through massive amounts of violence, right? And so what you are offering is living in this imagination, living in this paradigm, and pouring into this um, space necessarily shifts the rest. That necessarily changes, and so it's a different tactic than like guerrilla tactics kind of activism. It's different than that. it's about going inward and building that so that it spreads out. And then that kind of, it's a different kind of activism. It's a different kind of way of working, um, and bringing and uprooting that system, without necessarily feeling like you have to go into the building to do it.
Yeah.
Um, so it's exciting. I'm looking forward to this experiment, to try it. Um, I think it's like a well worth it project to like figure it out and to over time get to know people. You know, right now we're in Takaranto. For anyone who's seeing this outside of Takaranto, the three of us are in, you know, in this space right now, and um, this is the gathering place for over millennia. This is where people have come together to share, to barter, to trade medicines. Like it's baked into the very fabric of this space, right? These energies are still here. So tapping into the ancestral, the magic, the magic and this different kind of technology is exciting. It's a beautiful way to dream forward, especially right now where there is so much despair and attention on these distractions. Yeah, so it's very exciting.
As I mentioned before at the top of the call, just the endless curiosity is what is making me very excited about this process. Um, I feel like I've been involved in, I'm like, in the short years of my life, but I have been involved in so many conversations of wanting something different, um, and wanting to exist differently. But again, we are we are the people who have agency to create what that looks like. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm really excited by the deep knowledge that life is a sandbox and nothing is real, but everything is real, and we can make our thoughts into tangible things. Um, so I'm, yeah, enthusiastically um, ready to see what we will learn, what will come up, what we'll build, especially as other folks enter the space, um, what they'll learn about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything, my hope, my intention is to, for anybody who ends up watching this or experiencing this process, like implant little nuggets of healing, like little tiny bites
Yeah.
to help move us forward, you know? So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for the invitation and the trust. I really appreciate it.
And before we go, do you have any questions for the Spider-Woman Network? Maybe not for me to answer right now, but I can take those questions in and ponder.
Do we have any questions? Ooh, I feel like you posed what like what where do you need support? Like where do you locate support? And so for me, it's really about that. It's not necessarily a question, but it's a quest
Quest.
of a quest. Um yeah, in that direction of figuring out how we build this deco-liberation design, um that that is alive and flexible and tangible. Um, yeah, so it's more about tuning in to the collective, um,
Yeah,
tuning into the collective ask. I think that's what I'm looking forward to. Like for example, like how when we come together as people of the majority, um, how we change language, how we reshape it, how we sing song it, how we wrap it around each other. Like we and I'm excited about how we do that with this way of support, how we stretch it and share it um and expand it and all of it so that everyone has um not ownership as in ownership, but has ownership as in
Taking it.
is like access as an invitation is more what I'm talking about.
Mm.
Yeah.
I like just the question of how, because there's like, how do we do this as in overall, like how, what is the overall process? And then what is how, like little things that we can do that actually have solve really big problems that we're having today. That's what I'm interested in as well. Access as an invitation. Interesting. Abby, any questions?
Yes. What systems will we put in place to make room for change?
Good question.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah.
I love that question.
Thank you.
Because that's really the heart of what this is all about.
Yeah, I talked to my friend Keely about it a lot about surrender, and we have an idea of what we would like to do, but it is on the way to the project, the thing, etc. We learned the process is the most important bit of it, and there will always be something factoring in that will cause a need for adaptability,
Yeah.
right? And the ironic thing, so much lore. Uh, I used to be a teacher, and I learned that in order to give my students the best possible time with learning was to actually have more structure, um, because that prepared me for more flexibility.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you do all these exercises so that when improv happens, you're like, no problem, the beat changed, I got you. Um, and so it's laborious, and also very sweet fruits come from that kind of availability to move forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. I really
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's end for today. Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I forget if I said this on mic or off mic, but I've done a bunch of videos in the past. It's usually just me talking at people, but it's like such a better experience, because I have a lot of and this is just kind of an intro to, the classroom kind of stuff I want to share this summer. I have a lot of really deep stuff I've been studying that I want to share with community, but it's such a more enjoyable and richer experience to have you know people to get feedback from right away and engage in this kind of open classroom. And I love just kind of just taking back like what school could be for me, because
Yeah.
like I said, I love school and I hated it, but I want to love it again. So yeah, thank you for being here. um
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All the hard work, all the love work. It's beautiful. I'm excited for what we do together. All of us. Yeah.
yeah. Yay.
Ditto.
Okay. See y'all later next
See
time.
you.
Bye.
Bye.